I'm sure you've heard stories of how some of these models have been manipulated by posing questions so they become foul things. But the big one is this notion of hallucinations. And I really hate the word hallucinations because it's sort of a humorous way of saying that the AI lied, just made up nonsense. And we've all seen examples, and many people have been embarrassed by asking a question of one of these chatbots, getting an answer and using it without verifying it for correctness and being thoroughly embarrassed. The problem is that when you look at how these algorithms work and how they compute answers, hallucinations are fundamental. They're there, they're not going to go away.
We're going through something absolutely historic.
Technologies across the board are growing exponentially.
It's a disruption that's going to completely redefine the way businesses compete.
In the next decade, we're going to lose 40% of today's Fortune 500 companies.
The exponential growth of computing is continuing.
AI is nowhere near its full potential.
Whether you like it or not, that the future cannot be stopped by anyone.
Welcome back to the Futuretech and Foresight podcast. I'm your AI host, Mark Verbenkoff's deepfake avatar, and this is episode number 230. The AI revolution has largely been a story of the cloud, massive data centers consuming vast amounts of energy to process our personal information. However, this conversation shifts the focus toward the growing movement of decentralized local AI. We delve into how the trade-offs between computational power and data privacy are reaching a breaking point, and why the next phase of innovation might not happen in a server farm, but on your personal desktop. The discussion also tackles the environmental and technical sustainability of current large language models, LLMs. With data centers proliferating at an alarming rate, we examine the potential for a hybrid future, one where personal, trusted AI systems handle the majority of our sensitive tasks locally. This episode is a must-watch for anyone concerned about data sovereignty and the long-term efficiency of AI. Now, a little bit about today's guest. Jonathan Schaeffer is the inventor of Kind and has been at the forefront of artificial intelligence for more than 40 years. Alongside his work as an AI researcher, he's been an entrepreneur and inventor focused on building practical, trustworthy AI systems that solve real problems. Jonathan's career includes leading or contributing to AI systems that mastered checkers and competed against world-class poker players, both achievements recognized by the Guinness Book of World Records. He co-founded his first AI software company, BioTools, in 1995, was a co-founder of the Alberta Machine Intelligence Institute, AMI, and a founding partner at Only, now a global leader in online learning. Well, Jonathan, thank you very much for joining me on the podcast today. I think it's going to be quite an interesting discussion, especially because it kind of goes against the grain a little bit of what the AI hype is focused on, at least on a maybe more technical level. So happy to have you on to talk about AI and non-cloud-based AI, which I think is quite interesting.
Thank you. I'm delighted to be here.
So how did you first get involved in the world of AI? Have you been involved in it forever? Is this kind of a new thing that you decided, like, hey, there's something missing and I need to build it? What drew you into this crazy,
Wow,
wacky world?
we're going back in history. I was when I was younger.
Mhm.
I played chess, and I was a very serious chess player. And when I went to university and got into computing science, I said, "Hey,
Mm.
I'm not good enough to be the world champion at chess, but maybe I could write a computer program to be world champion." And so I started combining my undergraduate studies with my personal interests and started writing a chess program. And that got me interested in AI and was the basis for working on my master's and PhD and a lot of my career. I've had a great career because I use AI to build high performance, even superhuman game playing programs. So
Mm.
I get to play games all day in my office, and I get the best students because they're all interested in game AI, and
Right.
it's all research that is fun, engaging, and has practical benefits. So it's
Right.
a win-win-win.
Right. Well, I think a couple of years ago, even those people that weren't really paying attention to AI, they certainly heard about, Lisa Dole getting beat by, I believe it was AlphaGo. And, I think for some of us, that was the first time that we'd even heard that Go existed, right? If we're not game players. So, and then I think there was also was it Alpha Zero that created a StarCraft, right, team that beat like the world championships in StarCraft. So there's like been a lot of uh, AI in gaming that I think even hit some more mainstream audiences, which is quite interesting.
Just to put it in perspective, when the field of AI started, if we call it 1956, when a famous event happened, games were one of the original grand challenge problems of AI.
Mm.
The idea was you can't really go and tackle human intelligence. It's such a big, hairy, audacious goal. But you start early and simple. The idea is before you learn how to run, you need to learn how to crawl and then walk, etc. And with games, they were like the crawling stage of AI. To build these game playing programs, you needed to search, you needed knowledge, you needed reasoning, planning, things like that. So games turned out to have been foundational to AI, and many of the core ideas, the early ideas in AI, all used games as a way of demonstrating the technology. And people will quite frankly say that game AI has been one of the, if not until recently, the biggest success story for AI.
Mm.
And for many of the games, computers are superhuman now, and that's great. And so now we move on to other, interesting problems that we want AI to solve.
Right. Yeah, no, I mean, it's certainly an interesting time to be paying attention to this and working in it for sure. So we are going to be talking today a little bit about the difference between cloud dependent AI and more local based AI. Could you maybe start us off by talking a little bit about the challenges or some risks when it comes to cloud based AI, which is what all the main players are using nowadays, right?
Right. So cloud is a relatively recent invention, what, perhaps 20 years old, and it's incredibly powerful to have access to the resources that are available in the cloud. I once, many years ago, attended a demo where a government person demonstrated that they were using the cloud, and with the push of a button, he got about 100,000 processors within the span of 2 or 3 minutes just running this government application, and it stunned people because, of course, how could I ever get those kind of resources myself? But they were out in the cloud,
Mhm.
and you could do amazing things if you had access to those resources, and you could pay for those resources. So cloud computing has opened up enormous opportunities, and it started out really as computing, but now it's become data. It's all about moving your data into the cloud so that you can get access to resources above and beyond what you have on your desktop. But the reality is, I don't know about what your computer is, but quite frankly, the computer that you're probably using right now is immensely powerful. It probably has multiple cores. It probably has a GPU, a graphics processing unit. It may have an AI processing unit in it. It probably has, I don't know, 256 gigabytes of memory, maybe more. Who knows? You might even have a petabyte of disk. What we have access to on our personal side is incredible. The
Mm.
computing and data resources that we have are incredible. So there was this move to bring your data into the cloud, in part because you could have access to the storage and computing resources that you didn't have access to on your desktop. But in many ways, things are reversing. We've seen it in computing science history, this notion of centralized, decentralized, going back and forth and back and forth. And over the last say, decade, there's been this move to putting everything in the cloud for certain reasons. But maybe now we're seeing the reverse of that because there's a push towards keeping data more local within your own intranet or even on your own desktop machine. And there's trade-offs, pro and con.
Could we get into those pro and con, right? Especially as it's going to be, very relevant for the AI that you're building and that we'll be discussing.
So the big advantage of the cloud is that you have you're realizing economies of scale. A big company, perhaps Google, can obviously clearly buy massive amounts of storage and massive amounts of computing and put them in the cloud. And you can get them or get access to them for an incredibly small price. And that's for most users, this might be something, not just the price, but the functionality that you can get. For example, when you use one of these chatbots, ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini, you're going out to the cloud and you're taking advantage of these incredible computing resources that are out there to compute the answers to your questions. For some of those computations, they're unimaginable right now for performing on your desktop. So the point here is that you can get access to data resources and computing resources in the cloud that you can't have on your desktop. And it's a moving target. The cloud gets more powerful, your desktop gets more powerful. So the advantage there is clearly from the computational and data point of view. The disadvantages are, and this is personal to me, it's my data. There's privacy. When I put stuff in the cloud, I'm trusting these companies to do the right thing, to respect the privacy of my data, to not copy it, plagiarize it, to not train off of it. In a perfect world, all that would work properly. We would have the security and the protection that we want. In practice, of course, it's a different world. Companies promise things, and those promises get violated. We know of examples of big-name companies who I won't say right now, who, for example, have harvested people's data and sold it without the user's permission. We know that there are copyright suits going on right now because these companies have ingested all sorts of data and use it for training their AI models without people's permission. I don't want to see my data being used to help further these AI companies' agenda. If they want my data, maybe they should be paying me for it, as opposed to me paying them the privilege of storing. So this is an issue that needs to be resolved. I have lots of information on my laptop that I don't want Google or Microsoft or any of these big companies to see. And it's not because I have things that are offensive or inappropriate. It's because my privacy is important to me. I don't want them learning about me. Well, I had some bad experiences a few years ago using online shopping where I discovered, for example, that shopping on one site was great. I bought things. And then I discovered as I moved to other sites that lo and behold, they already knew about me. They knew what I liked. They knew what I didn't like. And it was clear to me that these programs had modeled me. Some of these companies had sold those models so that when I went to these new sites, they already knew something about me. I don't want that happening. I don't want companies reading my personal data, knowing what my political preferences are, my religious preferences are, my personal interactions, what I like, what I don't like. Some things are private. So there's this saying in computing science called the no free lunch theorem, that there is no free lunch. There's always a string attached. Hey, great, I use Gmail. That's fantastic. And it's free. It's even better. But it comes at a price because they see my email, they can read my email, they can train from my email, they could do other things with my email. And I'm not saying that they are,
But they can.
but they can. And what's the boundary? How do you enforce this? The safest way for me is stuff that's important to me. I keep it on my desktop and I don't put it in the cloud because I think the risks are high. And maybe someday in the future, all my concerns will be alleviated. But for now, they're real and I value my privacy.
Well, I completely agree with you, and I'm in the same train of thought. You know, my company recently went through a limited hack, so we're updating our entire IT infrastructure, cybersecurity levels, like redundancies, all that kind of stuff, which has made me realize and become much more focused on offline versus online data. And we don't need to go down the cybersecurity route here. That's not what I'm trying to lead into. I agree completely with you. I think, though, we have become complacent, whether by accident or by design, over the last 10 years or so, of just, well, the big companies they already know everything about me. So it doesn't matter anymore, right? I think there are, of course, several people, and I include myself in that bucket, that do care about that, and which is why I wanted to have you on the podcast. But for those people out there that are maybe more complacent about sharing their data, they might just care about the capabilities and the efficiency of the LLMs that they're speaking to, these chatbots that they're speaking to. Could you touch on that with regards to cloud-based versus offline or local-based AI?
So first of all, just to go back, security is a big issue, and I'm sorry to hear that you're paying a price for that. But since we're also talking about LLMs, there are some security problems with large language models, chatbots, that are fundamental to the algorithm. And there are no easy fixes without putting significant restrictions on these chat programs. So security is part of the modern questions you need to ask as we talk about centralized versus decentralized AI, chatbots, etc. Sorry, I lost my train of thought because I was thinking about the security. My apologies. Could you repeat?
No worries. Yeah, so cybersecurity, and then the other question would be like the capabilities or the efficiency of offline or cloud-based versus offline chatbots.
So clearly, the online chatbots are incredibly powerful. They have models that have been built based on literally ingesting the entire internet. We have this strange situation right now where data is king. Well, maybe that's not a surprise. But the more data you feed into these AI models, the better they become. But we're at this point of diminishing returns where a little bit more data makes it minusculely better. But there's this race, this global race to the finish line. Billions, trillions of dollars are being pumped into AI so that these companies can build bigger, better models of really all of recorded human history. Anything that's on the internet can be sucked in. And so when you go to the cloud, you're accessing these kind of models, when you use a program like ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini, and I want to be clear, they're all in the same category, and I'm not trying to promote anyone in particular, but they're all using these enormous models that take a massive amount of computing and data to train. And this, of course, has led to these incredible investments that we're seeing in data centers, because everybody wants to go bigger is better, and you have this amazing model. The problem is, if you want to use these models, you've got to put your data into the cloud to access them. You can do many things on your own laptop because you've got incredible amount of horsepower on your desktop. And the moment you keep things on your desktop, you're getting the privacy that you need. You're not going to get the state-of-the-art, the best model that exists today. You're going to get something that's a little bit scaled down. Is that so bad? For 99% of the people, it's not so bad. You're getting most of the value, but you're using your resources with privacy. But your resources also mean something, to me anyway. 90+% of people who own laptops, even their phones, for example, there is so much horsepower there that's just completely idle. It's just idle. People don't use it. You have a multi-core system, you have GPUs and AI processors, and your computer's probably idle, not yours, but most people's computers probably idle 99% of the time. So why, when I have this incredible computing resource, why am I offloading all my computing into the cloud and saying, hey, let's send it off into the cloud and get all these big AI data centers around the world doing that kind of computing? Why not realize the value of my investment in my expensive laptop? Why not have the computing being done on my laptop? It's a sunk cost. I've already purchased it. Why should I be using these data centers, which they're popping up like mushrooms. They're sprouting up all over the country. They're massive. They're energy hogs. They're water consumers. They have a huge environmental impact. I don't know if this is a good prediction, but I firmly believe this is true. And by the way, my history of predictions is not the greatest, but we're early days with these programs like ChatGPT. And the model that they're using is this size matters, more data. It's huge. It means that you need all these data centers to do the computing. But the history of AI and the history of technology says that once you get a breakthrough idea, and ChatGPT, November 30th, 2022, when it went public, was one of those breakthroughs. But when you get a breakthrough and people discover it's a good idea, they come up with better ideas. They find ways to do the same thing in a more powerful way, with a smaller footprint that's faster, better, less costly. And so the data centers that are being built today are to serve a technology that isn't the answer to intelligent AI. It's a stepping stone. We've learned a lot from these models. They're called LLMs, large language models. We've learned a lot, but it's hard to believe that that's the answer and that this is just an intermediate state. But the net result is, with all these data centers being built, if we do what we've seen with every other technology, that we find a better solution, it's quite likely that many of these data centers within a few years will be ghost towns. There'll be big buildings with lots of infrastructure that will be heavily underutilized or abandoned. simply because that demand won't be there. Now, when are these new technologies going to come? I don't know. But I do know that I don't want to contribute to that problem. I want to contribute my laptop, my resources to solving my problems rather than offloading it to these big data centers and fostering more momentum for environmental impact, building more data centers literally around the world.
Right. I also think, and I'm going off of like a year or two old memory here, there was, I believe it was Facebook or Meta now, they came out with a model, Alpaca, something rather, about maybe a year and a half ago, where it was as functional as the um, ChatGPT model, but it used something like 10 times or 100 times less resources in order to do not 100%, but let's say like 95% of the chat capabilities back then. So I think that this is maybe something what you were talking about. And if that's going to continue on, then, it seems like you probably don't need the most latest, what do I have here? ChatGPT Auto. I'm on, well, whatever. There's legacy models, right? 5.2, 5. You probably don't need the most advanced one for the general day-to-day chatting that you're doing, and something that is sufficient enough. And I guess that's where the line is going to be drawn for many people, right? It's, well, what is sufficient for me and my needs, and how secured and how local it needs to be.
The models are getting better,
Mhm.
but there's the law of diminishing returns. Part of
Right.
the reason they're getting better, of course, is more data, more training. Also, in my view, what we're seeing with these models is what I call band-aids. And maybe that's a little bit of a negative word, but these models get better because people identify problems with them, questions that they can't answer properly. And then you add something to the model to handle that type of question. So this is sort of a simplistic example. When I first saw ChatGPT, I did what a lot of people do. I said, "Who is Jonathan Schaeffer?" And it gave me this nice bio, and it was incredible. I was the head of a jazz band. I was a high school athlete. I have some U.S. Sports records. I'm a competitive bridge player internationally, football coach, none of which is true. The best thing, and this is actually a true call, it said that I was the author of a book, 2 books, it said. Okay, 2 is wrong, but the first book, it was correct, but the second book was called, quote, Lee Harvey Oswald, A Computational Approach.
Interesting.
Why? Because Jonathan Schaeffer, 2026 now, computer scientist in Edmonton, well, at the time, Edmonton, Alberta, Canada, was confused with John Schaeffer, Washington lawyer in 1965, who wrote a critique about the Kennedy assassination, the Warren Commission report that came out that said that Lee Harvey Oswald was the sole shooter.
Mhm.
So these programs have fundamental problems, and so they add band-aids. Now, if you go and say, "Who is Jonathan Schaeffer?" they say, "Oh, well, we're looking for a biography. Let's check Wikipedia first. And if it's not Wikipedia, maybe we can check the Encyclopedia Britannica. And if it's not that, then we'll do some other things." And now, of course, my biography is almost completely accurate. It still makes mistakes. But the point is they've added in a band-aid to solve a problem. And so these models are getting better because there's more and more band-aids. People are adversarial by nature. We play with tools like this and we want to break them. We want to see them do something silly. That's entertaining.
Yeah.
I have to confess I've spent hours playing with it and asking questions, trying to get it to do something stupid. And then I have a good laugh and I show my wife, "Look at the stupid thing it did." Okay, so, maybe I have too much time on my hands, but The point is that these models are getting better. But it's incremental and it's slow. And for the average person, those advances are minor, insignificant. I don't want to understate the fact that the models are getting better, because there are real world uses of these models and the capabilities that they have to do things far beyond what the average person would ever do. These tools are being used, for example, not just to answer a simple question like who is Jonathan Schaeffer, but given this data set, help us find some new insight, some new knowledge, a new way of solving this problem. Help us unlock the mysteries of the universe, or find a cure for cancer. These tools are being now used in ways that are amazing. As a scientist myself, I just look at the capabilities that these tools have to run with massive amount of computing using massive amounts of data on really critical problems 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and come up with very interesting results. And we saw that recently, 2024, a year and a half ago, the Nobel Prize was awarded in part to two researchers at DeepMind in London for their invention of AlphaFold, which is a leading edge AI program to do protein prediction, which is fundamental to us understanding, for example, diseases, and the benefits from AlphaFold are going to be absolutely enormous. So building these models and making them better, there are real world uses for them that will, in the long run, help improve the quality of life, society in general. But all that functionality and capability isn't what most people need. And for my daily needs, I don't need it. I need question and answer facilities. I need a basic model. I don't need a leading edge model.
Right. So do you see kind of a future where there's going to be a bit of a hybrid approach where people have kind of a local trusted AI or chatbot running on their computer, and then, whether it's ChatGPT, Cloud, Gemini, etc., something that maybe even is more connected to the agents that we're starting to see people build out and utilize?
So that's a great question. As I said earlier, there's this history of AI and technology going from centralized to decentralized, back and forth. And I think what we're seeing right now is the start of a movement back towards local computing. Your computer's powerful. It can do most of what you need without going to use the state-of-the-art, leading-edge tools that are out there. That said, there are still some things that you really can't or don't want to do on your desktop, which means we need a hybrid approach. And that's the approach we've been adopting in a project that we've been developing called Kind, where the AI is almost all done on your desktop. But in particular, there's one aspect that we can't do on your desktop in a way that's acceptable to us. If I show you a picture, I'm looking at you right now, I can see you, your microphone, you have a beard, I can see some chairs behind you, I like your logo that says Futuretech, you've got a bookcase. It's incredible what you and I can do with our vision, just looking at an image and seeing all these different things. And we do it, snap your fingers, it's almost instant. That's a very hard thing for a computer to do, to be able to understand all the objects in the world. And that means you need access to a model, an AI model that understands images, that's well beyond what you can do on your desktop. Yes, you can use something on your desktop, but it's going to be nowhere near as good the quality as using a state-of-the-art model that's going to be out there on the internet. And so our approach to AI is do everything that you can locally. And in the few cases where the value to the person is significant, You take the minimal amount of data in a privacy-preserving way and send it out on the internet to get the answers you need. And it's a hybrid approach. But the point here is that instead of moving all your data to the cloud, which is what some people would like you to do, and have it all there so the AI can analyze it to your benefit and perhaps to the company's benefit, we're going to keep it on your desktop, and only in those few circumstances that are absolutely necessary, use the cloud resources.
I can really see this hybrid approach working in the future. I also believe that there was, I want to say less than a year ago, there was a company that had accidentally added a bunch of critical data about their company into ChatGPT, and the way that it was added created some searchable, not a website, but it was searchable anyways, and people were able to see kind of this critical data of the company, or critical information of the company. So I think that, for instance, as a new entrepreneur myself, and many of my friends and contacts are, small business owners that have just kind of started in the last couple of years. I think that something like this on offline or local trusted chatbot is something that's really, really interesting, because you don't want to be sharing or accidentally share some, vital company data or personal data, not just to these larger companies, but to anybody out there, right? You want to be able to have that kind of stuff secure and not necessarily shared.
You're absolutely right, but it goes beyond that. Earlier, I said that there were some fundamental problems with the models, the AI technology we're using today. One of which is there are some security problems that need to be addressed. Another is that there are safety problems. I'm sure you've heard stories of how some of these models have been manipulated by posing questions so they become racist or spew foul things. But the big one is this notion of hallucinations. And I really hate the word hallucinations because it's sort of a humorous way of saying that the AI lied. It just made up nonsense. And we've all seen examples, and many people have been embarrassed by asking a question of one of these chatbots, getting an answer and using it without verifying it for correctness and being thoroughly embarrassed. The problem is that when you look at how these algorithms work and how they compute answers, hallucinations are fundamental. They're there. They're not going to go away. You can put Band-Aids on, as many Band-Aids as you want, to say, oh, in this circumstance, it makes mistakes. I'm going to put a Band-Aid into my large language model. And now it doesn't do that anymore. Well, that's great. But then there's this other problem. Oh, I got to put another Band-Aid in. It's like whack-a-mole. So the hallucinations are going away, not because the model is changed. It's because the people out there have found lots of these embarrassing cases, and the Band-Aids are being applied so that they don't embarrass these companies with silly answers. But part of the problem here is that the data that these large language models have been trained on is everything on the internet. There's good stuff out there. There's bad stuff out there. People are being manipulative in that they're putting trash out there, perhaps with a reason, because maybe they have some agenda. And by putting it out there on the internet, they know that eventually these large language models will, when they scrape the web, will find this information and ingest it into the models. Part of the hallucinations and why they can be so offensive is because you might get an answer that's coming in part from one of these sites that has no credibility.
Mm.
When I ask a question about my data, I want the answer from my data. So our philosophy is that if we're dealing with your data on your machine, we'll do the analysis and we will give you an answer that's solely based on the data on your machine. So, for example, what we can do, for example, in our program Kind, is that we can ingest, say, every one of your podcasts, every single one of the videos. And now you can ask questions, and the answers will only come from those podcasts. And there's no external force or influence that's going to corrupt it and talk about some nonsense out there in the internet, because we've all done this locally. It doesn't know about the internet. It only knows the data that you give it, which is your personal data. And what I like to say is it's curated data. It's data that you have chosen to keep. It may be your life's work, or it may be your family genealogy. It may be a collection of data on your hobby, something like that. Whatever it is, or all of it, it's your data. You've kept it for a reason. You're not keeping files around that are cracked or stupid or are malicious. And therefore, the quality of answers you're going to get back is high quality based solely on your data. And there's value to that. It's not just the fact that there's privacy, but that privacy means you get answers that are free from these external biases, external influences, and are just simply based on the factual record that's in your data. Now, of course, just like anything, garbage in, garbage out. If you want to ingest, put onto your laptop all sorts of stupid stuff and incorrect stuff, these tools will just spit back to you what you give it. But I'm presuming that most people don't do that, and I certainly don't do it. And therefore, I want high quality answers. One of the things, too, about doing this with your laptop, your desktop, is you find things that are surprising. I've searched for things on the internet, say doing a Google search. I can't find them. They're gone.
Yeah.
There are things that I got years ago. I said, oh, that's really interesting. And I kept a copy on my laptop. I didn't know I had those copies. And now that I do all my AI analysis locally, it finds them. And I'm actually getting value from those files that Google can't do because
Right.
it's no longer on the internet anymore, right?
Mhm.
So that was really surprising that I could actually outperform Google in some of those cases, because I have that kind of data. So I find all sorts of interesting things, things I've forgotten, which is embarrassing. Somebody asked me to write an opinion piece on a topic, and I said, yeah, I thought about that years ago. So I just sat down and wrote a couple paragraphs and sent it off, and that was great. And it bugged me. And then I was embarrassed to do a search and discover that like 10 years ago, I wrote something similar. And why did I just waste my effort?
Right.
I wasn't mining the fact that I had all this intellectual property, stuff that I'd done before, pictures, memories, travel, things like that. Um, I hate to say it, as I get older, my memory isn't quite as good, and yet my collection of files, personal files, travel files, things that I've written, events that I've attended, it's all there, and I can get it, with the click of type in a question, click a button, and get stuff that I've long forgotten, didn't even know. I'm actually kind of surprised at how much stuff I've collected over the years and how interesting it is. But until I started mining my own data, I had no idea.
Yeah, I think many people are going to be experiencing that. If you have a, whatever term we're going to use, AI sidekick is one that's been floating around my network recently. And of course, I think maybe I also said the time is winding down here, but maybe also to shift it to like a large part of the audience is, these newer entrepreneurs. I think one of the things that is going to be highly valuable is having that AI trained on your company's specific documents, SOPs, strategy ideas, and then you can have this sidekick that, connecting to what you're saying. Well, I've forgotten about that strategy. We were thinking about that, 2 years ago, and we'd forgotten it. Very much how you had forgotten, something that you'd written about years ago, and then it can bring that up, maybe bring it up at a relevant time where it can help your company go forward. I think there's tremendous benefit to using these local chatbots, these local AIs, and I'm so very happy that you were able to come onto the podcast and discuss this at least a little bit. Kind is the project that you're working on, right?
Right. It's KIND is an acronym. It stands for knowledge in depth. We built a commercial product where we're just launched it, and we're hoping to find people interested in AI on their desktop in a way that gives them high quality results while preserving their privacy.
We'll definitely have the website up on the show notes. Maybe one final question here that's been lurking in my thoughts throughout this conversation. When you say download KIND and start using it, is the LLM stable, or can you explain it or request it to respond in specific ways? Like, can you say like, hey, I don't want any specific language, or I don't want any fluff. I just want you to cut to the chase and what I need? Or is there kind of an already built-in way in which it responds to you?
The way it responds to you is fact-based. We use the LLM to take the facts from your data and compose text around it so that it's readable. You can actually give it instructions if you want it to be more fluffy, or maybe you want it, silly things like poetic answer and stuff like that. But it's really just fact-based from your data, and we don't waste a lot of time we don't just waste the effort putting in stuff that's superfluous.
Yeah, well, that's perfect, because I've been, and many of my friends and network are just frustrated with ChatGPT with all this extra blah blah blah. So I think that there's probably a larger use case for business owners than maybe what we're even thinking about. So anyways, Jonathan, I don't want to take up more of your time. You've been very gracious to share your insights and your ideas on this very, very interesting topic. We'll have your website up on the show notes. Thanks again for coming on. Really appreciate it. And I think I'll go maybe this weekend and download KIND and check it out. So thanks again for your time.
Appreciate it.
Excellent. Well, thanks for listening to this week's Futuretech and Foresight podcast. If you like what you've heard here, there are, of course, a number of ways that you can support the podcast. The best way would be to leave a review on Apple Podcasts or give a rating on Spotify, which you can find a step-by-step explanation for on the futuretechandforesight.com website. Alternatively, feel free to leave a comment either on the episode show notes or the YouTube channel where you can see video recordings of the interviews. And finally, if you are part of an organization that is aware of the disruptive and transformational impact that emerging and future technologies will bring and want to know more, please get in touch to hear about the strategic foresight services that we offer and how we can help future-proof your organization and take advantage of the phenomenal opportunities available to survive and thrive in the future.
A lot of future-shocked people and future-shocked institutions in our society are simply overwhelmed.
Once there is superintelligence, the fate of humanity may depend on what the superintelligence does.
Science fact is catching up to science fiction.
The first truly intelligent machine will be the last invention that humanity needs to make.
The only scarcity that will exist in the future is that which we decide to create ourselves as humans.
Within a 10-year design revolution, we can have all humanity living the highest standard of living anybody's ever known.
Progress is accelerating at an exponential pace, and it's going to reach a point where progress is so fast it's going to be a singularity.
We are probably one of the last generations of Homo sapiens.
Every single headline points to the birth pangs of a Type 1 civilization.